Okay, I'm sharing my screen, but sometimes when I present in Keynote, I might not see the chat. So sometimes that happens. So if that's the case, I might reply a bit later if you put some questions on the chat. But let's get started.
Now there,
Yeah.
without pressing play, you can go to the slideshow and like press play in another window. Then you can see the chat as well.
Okay.
Then you share that window.
Wait.
Yeah, yeah,
Slideshow
yeah.
in window, right?
That one.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, all good.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. So, welcome to this session. It's about finance. So, you already learned a bit about TM, and let's go move into finance because finance is like money is really important. So, just a bit about myself to get started. So, I'm currently the elect global finance manager for ISAC International, and I was former MCP of ISAC Sri Lanka, and before that I was MCP Finance, and then before that I was LCP, and before that I was LCVP Finance. So mostly my experience has been around uh, the role of president as well as the role of finance. So today I want you to connect few of the learnings that I had over the last 5 years in finance as well as the role of president so that you can actually take some inspiration for you to lead finance for the next like rest of your term as well as like the upcoming term for the CPs as well. Yeah. So the color I chose, like I know like there's a lot of colors themes for this conference. I chose green, almost green because it's finance. Okay, to get started, let's do a small quiz. So I'm going to give you a quick link. It's I was initially planning on doing Kahoot, but then again we didn't have enough capacity, so I'm going to give you a Google form. But then again, you have a couple of questions. I want you to answer these questions based on the context that you know. So you might not know the exact answer. That's fine because there's always a context that you know, and you can guess the answer as well. So what I want you to do right now is to go to this link. Yeah, thank you, Sil, for putting on the chat. Go to this link and you have actually 9 questions there. So I'm gonna play one song. Uh, During that song, you're going to like just answer these questions and submit the answer. Okay. Let me know if you can see the form. Okay. Thank you for the feedback. It works. So yeah, so you all can take like one song and just like fill out the quiz. Actually they generated most revenue from affiliation fee. Let's see, that's about 39%. So majority of people again is not correct how they're actually generating revenue here, but they're close to chimpanzees. Then next part is over the last 9 months, APLCs generated most revenue from what? Majority of people again answered it's BD, but the actual answer is again exchange because this is considering over the last 9 months. It's again the highest, the total amount of revenue that is actually contributing is from exchange. Let's move on to the next question. Over the last 3 months, MCs generated most revenue from where? Okay, majority of people answered affiliation, sorry, BD, but the actual answer is affiliation fee again. Even in the last 3 months, majority of MCs actually generated most of their revenue from affiliation fee. If you actually compare this, you earn, I'm using euros because this is GFB data, but 87,000 euros of affiliation fee, but BD is just 16,000. But if you look at the answers, like the context where people, most of the people are there is not correct. Then if you look at LCs, last 3 months, where did majority of revenue come from? 66% of people say it comes from BD, but the actual, it comes from project management. There's only a little marginal difference between exchange, but compared to BD, it's high actually. So over the last 3 months, most of the LCs in AP generated majority of their revenue from project management, which could say that people are starting to maybe sell virtual conferences or virtual spaces, events, and things like that as well. Uh, yeah, so this is a quick recap of like the context where you live it, for you to understand what you are doing. So wait. Again, this I have more screenshot about the cost. So it is also okay. We are reducing at a cost of 12%, but majority answered. Hmm, this is not bad because the majority is at red, so which is most of you all answered correctly. And monthly cost rate, again, lots of people think that their costs are dropping at 15%, but actually is they are dropping at 10%. Why these are very important? Because you need to, once you have a better understanding of the context that you're happening, the kind of decisions that you're taking will be much more improved. Uh, MOCR, I just dropped it. Before I move into this part, I just want to answer the last question about the beer question as well. Majority of the people actually answered for the last question in the supermarket as milk powder. But this is actually a study that has been done like in 1992. Uh, it's about like what is the best product to have like with diapers is actually beer. One of the reasons is like in the supermarket you want to promote impulsive buying, right? So most of the time when you are going to buy a diaper, when you see beer, the correlation between beer and diaper has been very strong. So the thing is like sometimes you might have your opinions, you might have your perceptions, okay, this might be the thing that is actually happening, and you want to take decisions regarding that, but the actual truth can be very different if you really understand the context and if you really analyze the data. So to start off, this is my midpoint message. To lead finance, you first need to read finance. And like financial data is one of the most important data that you have for decision making, and it's available for all of you as well. That's the beauty of it, because over the last 5 years, Isaac has been improving the data collection from all the LCs, MCs, and everything. So financial data is actually available. Now the bottleneck we have is how can you actually make sense using this data. Uh, so decision making from financial data. So what I'm going to do now is you understand that, okay, we have financial data. We need to understand a lot about the context which is happening so that we can make better decisions. So the bottleneck we always have how to convert this kind of financial data into a decision. So here I'm like suggesting a 5-step process for you to convert this kind of financial data into more actionable decisions and actions. So the first step is collect financial data, which is already being done from GFB. And I know most of you all do accounting, and so you're collecting this. Then you need to calculate a metric, like calculate financial metrics, like whatever, for example, like percentage drop, months of cash reserves, gross profit, things like that. A lot of metrics you can calculate. Then you need to interpret that metric, then decide possible actions. Because once you interpret a metric, you can have a set of possible actions that which you could take. Then you want to select one of those and take actions. But what happens is you look at the data, sometimes you also calculate the metrics, then you interpret the metric, but you don't take any actions based on that. You just, okay, you just listen to it and just proceed with the rest of your life as usual. So in order to do that, I'm taking an example. So initially I was thinking of putting into breakout rooms, but of course we don't have time for that. So I just want you all to answer in the chat what you think as well. So we are going through an example of, okay, we are collecting data from the balance sheet and income statement from GFB data. Then we are calculating a metric called months of cash reserve. I don't know. MCPs should definitely know this. LCPs, if you don't know, it's a very, very important metric that we calculate globally as well as in ISAC, is months of cash reserves, which tells you like how many months you can survive if there's no cash coming into your LC or MC. Then that's a metric we are calculating. Then we understand what does this value, the metric mean? What does the MOCR value mean? Then we decide on possible actions, and we then pursue one or more actions. Okay, so pretty much this is the example. So if you want to familiarize yourself with the this metric of months of cash reserves. It's about bank balance, petty cash, and reserves. This is financial reserves. So that is overall cash that you have. You divide it by the average expenses over the last 12 months. So you get, like this is the amount of money that you're spending monthly. So what does this mean? MOCR means like if we if we stop getting cash, like how long can we survive? Okay. So in my example, what I want to do is like imagine a situation. So this is going to be a personal exercise. Imagine a situation where your entity, if you're MCP, your MC has 2.5 of months of cash reserves. If you're an LCP, imagine it's 2.5 months of uh, cash reserves in your LC. And what I want you to do is you're not going to go into a breakout, but think for yourself, what does this mean and what is the next step that I can do. Once you like think it, just type it in the chat or just unmute and tell to everyone as well. So I'm just gonna give you like 30 seconds to 1 minute. Think about it, like, okay, I have this value of 2.5 months of cash reserves. What's the next step I'm going to do as a president? That's what you want to think. A question. Okay. Yes, Travis.
Actually, I want to ask a question, right? Like the mechanism of calculating FOCR or MOCR and MOFR, I think it actually doesn't make sense with the current situation because we are comparing with the past 12-month expenses while we are running exchange. And now a lot of things we are putting into virtual. I'm thinking about the cost volume. Would that still be that large when comparing into it? And if we are using the wrong matrix, to measure, then it will give us the wrong picture on how we are seeing the reality. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good question. So, like for everyone here as well. So like the MOCR metric, it calculates the previous 12 months of expenses. But also a metric that you can follow up calculate for this is using the budgeted data for the next 12 months. So that is also a metric. So that is also MOCR that which you can calculate. That's true. That's a good point that you are telling. So actually, what this happens, the first thing is a very pessimistic approach. Where it's the worst case scenario. But for example, you do a budget planning as well for your term. So one of the things you can do is a MOCR forecast, which is using the budgeted data. And that gives a picture of where you are heading as well. Then you can compare. Actually, that is the next step which you can also take after calculating this metric. It's not that this metric is wrong, but that metric shows like if MOCRs have been growing for the past 3 months, that shows that actually we have been reducing cost because then the average cost becomes less because the new months have lower cost. But an additional metric which you would want to calculate is the forecast of MOCR, which is a good question and a good metric you want to do as well. That's a good question. Thank you. Anyone want to answer like what are the next steps you can do? Okay, I'm going to ask some MCPs. Let's see. Okay, Chetra, what's your answer? Are you here? Okay, so anyone wants to like it could be just one step that which you can take once you have that figure. What would you do as NCP? What would be the next step that you're going to do in this situation? Anyone? Okay, we have one answer reporting. Okay, like the like reporting this to for the rest of the team, rest of the membership. That is one thing. Anything else?
Well, the other step also would be is okay, now that we have 2.5 MOCR, the other step would to kind of be forecasting what kind of expenses we have in the future, and kind of our first priority would be extending that 2.5 number as much as possible, so that we can kind of reduce costs as much as possible. So I think that would be the first step in terms of looking at prioritizing of increasing that number and seeing what costs can we avoid in the coming months or how to mitigate.
Okay, thank you, Varun. That's a really good point. Like how you can, because the variables here is cash and expenses. How you can focus on one of the variables. Okay, we have more answers. Reduce costs even further. Stop managing expenses. Alternative source of revenue. Okay, thank you. Okay, trim expenses. Body recently. Okay, alternative. Okay, yes. Thank you for the answers. So let's move ahead. We have like 2 more minutes. Uh, okay, so the first thing, all these answers are perfectly correct, which you can take. But before all of this, first thing you need to do is to have a benchmark or a target. I think it aligns with what Varun also mentioning, is that 2.5 is there, but then again you need to know what is the benchmark, because you don't know 2.5 is good or not if you don't have a benchmark or a target. So that's the first thing that you need to do, is you want to, whatever the metrics that you have, you want to have a benchmark or a target for that metric. For example, if it's months of cash reserves, your target is 6. Let's say it's 6. Then okay, this is the target, or like the place where we want to go. Then what's the gap. Then the gap is, let's say, 3.5 months. Then in this situation, uh, like that is where you build strategies or plans or all of these, like reducing costs, coming up with new revenue streams. All of these come into place once you identify that position. Because what happens in most of the cases, we don't have that clear target. Then we just do random stuff without having a target to achieve, and like the call to actions are not clear. So I agree to all of the things that have been put in the chat as well. For example, once you have that target, what are things you can do? You can do a further cash flow projection to see what are the kind of costs, like what are the kind of cash inflows that you're going to have for the next couple of months. Then you can do to check the budget and see what are the kind of costs that you can further decrease in this. And then other things is check with receivables. If you can actually have some of the receivables sooner than that you have planned, so that you can improve your cash status. Like discuss with your team the possible options to generate new revenue streams which can turn into cash, and also see like what are the upcoming major events or conferences which could affect like your cash balances and such as well. So what I want you to do as a president is to ask these kind of questions from your MCVP finance or LCVP finance. When they report the value of 2.5 MOCR, you ask, okay, what's your benchmark, or what's the metric that you want to achieve? Then you see the gap. Then you ask the questions from your team, like to bridge these gaps, what are the kind of actions we can take? Then you start on a whiteboard, or where you start writing, okay, these are the kind of things that we want to do to achieve this. Like Travis also mentioning, a good metric to calculate is the forecast of the MOCR as well, so that we can really have that context of what is happening, so that you can really align the kind of decisions that you can take. So every financial metric should have a benchmark for it, and you can actually take decisions based on that. So just remember, when you always, as a president in your term, whenever your LCVP finance come up with all these gross profit margin, all this jargon to you on your face, like then ask these questions like, okay, what does this mean? What's the benchmark? How can we achieve the gap? So that is actually the essence of this, how to convert financial data into decision making. With that, I just want to recap again, like collect financial data, check if you are doing that, then calculate financial metrics, interpret the metric, decide possible actions, and select actions. Finally, I just want to leave you with an exciting quote. If you have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, like the diapers and all of that, let's go with mine. So pretty much like what I'm saying, it's the importance of having data and understanding context. And when you understand the context, you are starting to make a lot more better decisions, and your innovation, your thinking, everything improves, and your maturity as a president really improves once you understand the context. Just don't think finance is difficult and not to understand the context, but always read, ask questions, and improve your context, so that you can actually make better decisions. You can be more innovative and be the best presidents for your MC and SC. Yeah, with that, thank you very much.